How's it going, guys? Welcome to another Python tutorial, and today we're going to be talking about if statements and operators. So with that said, let's get right into it. Alright, now, if statements, what are they and what are they used for? Well, if statements are basically what they say in the name. Now, if statements basically compare to see if whatever we put in here is true or not. If it's true, then it does a certain thing. If it's false, then it doesn't do that certain thing. Now, the way you type in if statements is that you say if, then whatever value you want here, whatever condition you want here, and then colon, enter, and then you type whatever function you want to execute here. For example, you want to print true. Now, what we can do it here is we can test it using, for example, let's say we create a variable called x, we set it equal to 8. And now we can check, for example, if x is equal to 8. Now what this will do is it will basically check if x is equal to 8, and you might see that there's an error here. Why is that? Well, because to actually check if something is equal to something here, what we do is we type a second equal, right, like so. Because the first equal is assigning something to another, the second equal is to state that you're actually comparing two things. And now if we run the program, as you can see, it prints true because x is in fact 8. Now if we set the condition to be 9 here, as you can see, it just prints nothing. Pretty sweet stuff. Now, what we can do is that we can also compare, for example, greater than, for example, or we can say less than, or we can say less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Now, what you can also do here is that after, for example, you've done a condition here, x is less than or equal to 9, for example, which will, in this case, print true since it is less than 9. You can also, for example, check for another condition. So you can, for example, say, and x is greater than or equal to 10, for example. So now it will accept values from basically, actually, let's do, for example, 5. So now we'll accept values from 5 to 9, and this should still print true. Now let's say we set x to something like 4, for example. Now it won't print true because it is less than 5. Now what you can also do is make this a non-mandatory condition. For example, you can do or, which means that one of these has to be true for this to execute. For example, 4 in here is actually less than 9, meaning that it will still print true. Even though it is greater, even though it was less than 5, it will still print true because we set it as or. Now we can actually do a lot of stuff with this if statement. For example, we can create something like a selection variable here that takes in a value. And since the if statements don't only check for integers, they also check for example, strings or booleans or even floats, for example. So you can say if selection is equal to friend, which is in this case the value of player, which is in fact selection, meaning that this code should run welcome. But let's say, for example, you have a selection with boss here, and now the code executes with nothing printed. But let's say you want to print something and you still want to check for friend. How do you do that? Well, what you want to do is that you want to head down now, go back with the indent, and you want to type in elif, aka else if, which basically takes in a second operator here. So for example, selection is equal to a enemy, and right there what we want to do is, of course, we want to print get out of here. So with that said, now if we run the program, we should see that it says get out because selection is now equal to enemy, and that means that it will select this if statement here, and because it passes this and like it checks that it's not equal to friend, meaning that it just skips and passes to the next one. Now let's say, for example, you iterate through everything. Let's say our selection is equal to neutral, and you've iterated through literally everything. So now what you want to do is, of course, what's going to happen is that it's not going to output anything because it's not enemy, it's not friend, so it just kind of skips through it. Now, if you don't want to detect for a certain thing and you just want to detect for anything other than these two conditions, then just go ahead and say else and go down here. So basically, if it's not enemy or friend, then it will execute this line of code here. So what we can do is print, for example, who are you, of course. And now what's going to happen is that it's going to say, who are you? Because we are neutral, we're not a boss, we're not an enemy, and we're not a player or a friend. So with that said, this right here has been if statements, and I will see you guys in the next video.